Hello, small folk. It's Christmas Eve and very nearly time for me to set off on my sleigh. I'd like to tell you a story about me and Mother Christmas and how we came to live in Lapland. I read it to my elves every Christmas Eve. I hope you enjoy it as much as the elves. Lapland, the untold story of Father Christmas. In olden times, when magic still filled the air, there lived a master toymaker and his wife. They lived in a little cottage nestled within a mighty forest in a distant northern land. The toymaker was known far and wide for beautiful toys he made, each lovingly crafted by hand. Once finished, he would pack his toys into his old canvas sack, which he would throw over his shoulder and carry to markets and country fairs, where townsfolk bought them as gifts for their excited children. Look, there's a beautiful story. These toys filled the children's hearts with more joy than other toys, and there was one reason for this. The toy maker still had the heart of a child. He still put out milk on the hearth for the elven folk, hoping they existed. He still sang to the birds and greeted the forest animals every morning, hoping they would understand him. He still made wishes upon stars, while he even thanked the rain and delighted in watching the earthworms making the soil ready for the new flowers. The toy maker looked at each and every day with wonder, with an open heart and an open mind, never having lost his belief in the goodness of everything. In short, his heart was so full of joy that it poured into all the toys he made. The toymaker's wife's name was Mary, and she too had the heart of a child. But there was one great sadness that cast a shadow over the couple's days, causing their hearts to ache with grief. They had not been granted a child of their own, and as the days and years slipped away and their hair turned the colour of snow, they knew no child would ever call them mother or father. One year, as the winter chill began to bite, and the sun shone its friendly face less and less, Mary thought of the children in their village, those whose parents worked hard to feed them and who had nothing left to spend on a toy for Christmas. Suddenly, her face glowed with excitement. "Dear heart," she said to her husband, "I have an idea." The toymaker's eyes twinkled with blue with interest. "An idea, Mary?" he echoed. "What is it?" "Wouldn't it be wonderful," continued his wife excitedly, "if we made a toy for every child in the village and delivered them secretly for the children on Christmas Day?" The toymaker looked at his smiling wife and agreed in an instant. "Why, Mary, you are a kind heart. What a wonderful idea," he cried. "Just think how happy the children of the village will be on Christmas Day to find a new toy on their doorstep. Their imaginations will come alive with dreams of how the gifts arrived, and they dance with joy at their plan." But there they are dancing. I wonder who that is. "There is no time to waste," Mary said. "There are many children in our village, and winter is already beginning to steal away the days. I will help you with the toy making so everything is ready in time." And so they worked together, side by side, night and day and night, until excitedly they had crafted all the gifts. By Christmas Eve, all their work was done. All around the cottage lay toys of every kind, puppets, spinning wheels, and wooden soldiers with fortresses, farmsteads with cattle. They wrapped each gift in paper and tied it with ribbon and hugged each other with delight. When even the moon had gone to sleep and the deep darkness shrouded their movements on that cold Christmas Eve, the toymaker and his wife wrapped themselves in their favourite red woolen shawls, hand-knitted by Mary to protect them from the bitter north wind. Loading their old sleigh with sacks full of gifts, they harnessed their loyal reindeer and set off for the village, the deep snow muffling every sound from his hooves. As candles were being snuffed out from the villagers, widows and families settled down in their beds for the night. The couple crept to each house where an unsuspecting child slept and silently left a gift on the doorstep. When all the toys were delivered, they headed home with a skip in their step and could barely sleep that night for the thought of the children awaking the next morning to find their presents. "Dear heart," whispered Mary before dozing off to sleep, "thought we'd never had a child of our own, but tonight I feel as if I am a mother to 100 children." And they both slept peacefully with smiles on their faces. Christmas morning arrived, and squeals of delight sounded around the village as each child awoke to discover a wonderful toy. Bewildered parents marvelled at the mysterious gifts, while the children played merrily with their new presents. The toymaker and his wife hugged each other with delight, and a quite wonderful feeling came over them. It was as though their own sadness had magically lifted through the gift of giving. And so more Christmases passed, and the toymaker and his wife, working together happily through the year to make beautiful toys to deliver for Christmas. And where more wood was needed, the toymaker would head deep into the forest to gather it. What's going to happen next? But it was on one such trip that the strangest thing happened. For when the toymaker had loaded his barrow and was ready to head to the cottage, he found his axe had disappeared. Thinking he must simply have mislaid the tool, he thought of it no more and continued home, where to his surprise he found the missing axe on his doorstep. Stranger still, the very same thing happened again on the next trip to the forest. By the time he was ready to leave, his axe had vanished from sight, only to magically reappear when he returned home. "Mary dear," said the baffled toymaker to his wife one evening, "each time I gather wood from the forest, my axe vanishes, only to be found again on our doorstep when I return home. Whatever can it mean?" "Dear heart," answered Mary, equally confused, "whatever the reason, let us find out," now excitedly that the forest may indeed be enchanted. The couple decided to uncover the mystery. So one summer's evening, as the sun was setting a dappled light through the trees, the toymaker and Mary crept into the forest, laid the axe by the foot of a fine silvered birch tree, hid themselves in the ferns, and waited to see what could happen. And oh, what an incredible secret they discovered. For on this night, the toymaker and his wife saw with their own eyes that the secret world of elves and fairy folk from their imagination lived in the real world too. As they watched from their hiding place, two figures came into sight, elves. The first, smartly dressed in a fine green coat with matching top hat adorned with deer antlers, was followed by the prettiest of elves, her red flowing hair topped by a forest wreath. The toymaker and his wife stared wide-eyed, barely breathing, with excitement as they saw and strained their ears to hear what the elves were saying. It was the female elf that spoke first, crisscrossing the glade as she did so, with the lightest of steps, her voice gentle and questioning, each sentence rhyming with the last. "But why would they want to cut down our trees? You are wise, dear sage. Explain to me, please." The older elf, who seemed to go by the name of Sage, twirled his green beard between his fingers and thoughtfully before offering his companion a considered opinion. Most probably for firewood," he said thoughtfully. "It gets awfully cold for human folk in the winter months, Eco, my friend." On hearing this, Mary looked at her husband, alarmed. "We must say something, dear heart," she urged. Quickly, before they go, we must tell them why we need the wood." Fearing the elves might disappear, Mary scrambled out from her hiding place. Oh my God, let's see what happens next. "No, no, elves, please understand," she said. "We use the wood from the trees to make beautiful toys for the children to enjoy at Christmas time. We carve into gifts and spread joy and make wishes come true. We are sorry for not asking if we could cut the branches, but we didn't know the forest was your home." The two forest elves nearly jumped out of their skin on seeing Mary appear, yet listened to what she was saying before fleeing down a magical pathway faster than a blink of an eye. And although the toymaker and his wife never understood why, from that day forward they never needed to gather wood again. Every time they went to their store, they found a waist-high pile of neatly cut branches, which they felt must surely be a gift from the elves. But why they should want to help them remained a mystery. Each year, as the first snowflakes of winter fell, the children of the village looked forward with excitement to the most magical day of the year, Christmas Day. And though deep in Christmas dreams they never saw their gifts delivered, each child felt within their heart it was the kindly toymakers who lived in the forest that made their wishes come true. And as so often happens with good things, news travelled from village to village of the red-shawled toymakers who delivered wondrous gifts in the quiet of Christmas Eve. Soon letters started to arrive at the toymaker's home, few at first, but then more and more as news of their kindness spread, until sacks brimming with children's wishes filled the toymaker's home. One autumn evening, as the birds of the forest sang their last song of the day, the toymaker turned to Mary with a rarely seen furrowed brow. "Dear Mary," he said, "though we work every day and often through the night to grant the wishes of the children, I fear we haven't enough time to finish all the toys in time for Christmas this year. What are we going to do? I cannot bear for the children to be disappointed come Christmas Day." Too weary to speak, Mary shed a tear of sadness, not knowing how they would finish the huge task in front of them, and both fell asleep, exhausted at their actual workbench. Unbeknownst to the toymaker and his wife, Sage and Eco, the forest elves, had been watching them closely since their first encounter in the forest. They were curious, for they were bringing more and more wood for the toymakers to use with each passing week. So one evening, when Sage was out walking and talking with his friend, the badger, Eco scurried unseen down the forest pathway to the toymaker's cottage and peeped into the window. Through the misty glass, she spied them sleeping soundly at their workbench, with piles of wish letters and half-finished toys scattered all around them. Horrified, she sped back to tell Sage the news. "Sage, we must help them, and the time is now, or our elf-folk will suffer. We both know how. They are the ones we have waited to find, each with a childlike magical mind." "Yes, Eco," replied Sage, the wise woodland elf. "I think you could be right. Maybe we can trust them with our secrets. For we have seen with our own eyes how their kindness inspires children to truly believe in magic." "But Eco, I am afraid to break the law that forbids us from sharing the secrets of our elf world with human folk. If you are sure they are so special, we must call a meeting of the Elf Council to decide." Wrapping themselves in thick blankets of moss to keep warm in the cold land of the ice and snow, Sage and Eco made the journey to Lapland, the home of the elves at the top of the world. And so an urgent meeting was called, with elves travelling from far and wide to attend, as the northern lights shone overhead. Excited elves of all shapes and sizes crowded into a snowy forest clearing, encircled by majestic trees. Waiting for them to arrive was the most mystical of them all, an elf dressed entirely in purple from head to curly toe, who every elf there recognised immediately as Zauber the Magical. A hush descended on the twilight gathering, and Zauber spoke first. "Elves of the world," he said, "Sage and Eco of the Enchanted Forest have called this special meeting of the Elf Council to request a permission to break elf law and speak with human folk." At once, the forest gathering erupted into deafening cries, and anxious elves shouted their disapproval. "Never!" bloomed a sooty blacksmith elf by the name of Ambelt. "Once human folk learn of the elf world, our way of life, it'll be lost forever." "What about our secret pathways?" cried Compass, the Pathfinder elf. "Human folk will destroy them." "What about the elflets?" shouted Pixie Mixie, the sweetmaker. "How can we protect them?" As angry elves shouted to be heard, Zauber banged his cane on a tree stump to silence the gathering. Stepping timidly forward from behind her companion Sage, Eco addressed the crowd. "Please understand, fellow elves, these human folk think not of themselves. They spend their days making toys for all the human girls and boys. But now they need our help, I fear, or presents will not be made this year." Zauber listened with kind eyes before responding. "Eco, you are a gentle elf, but this is a great thing you ask of us. Never before have elves shared their secrets with human folk. Do you really believe these toy makers are so special? Why should we trust them with our elf secrets and welcome them into our elf world?" In all the commotion, not one of the elves had noticed an elf more beautiful than any other, sitting high on a high branch of a mighty tree, until a sprinkling of powdery snow drifted down, dusting their hats. And as they looked up, they saw a golden-haired elf glowing in the moonlight, who spoke with a confidence unexpected of an elf so young. "My fellow elves," she began, "for those of you who do not know me, my name is Wish, for I keep watch over all the wishes made by human folk. To wish is to believe in magic, in hopes and dreams that know no boundaries. Wishes are pure, like the innocent heart of those who have made them, and they are fragile but also powerful. They burn brightly like sunbeams, rising in magical colours of blues, pinks, greens and violets to the top of the world, where they form the colourful display of dancing belief. The human folk call them the Northern Lights. It is under these gentle lights that we elves prosper, because like our nocturnal friends, the badger, hedgehog and the owls and the foxes, we cannot come out at daylight. But, dear elves, I bring you sad news. It seems even children are losing their belief in magic and the power of wish-making. The gentle light of wishes is fading and threatening to destroy our way of life. But now the forest elves have brought us a message of hope. They have found a human couple who are inspiring not only children, but also parents too, to believe again. This humble toy maker and his wife have kept open minds and warm hearts their whole lives. Thanks to these two humans, wishes are once more floating to the skies of Lapland and returning to light our lives. But they are overwhelmed with their task and need our help. Elves, we must trust this couple and welcome them into our elf world. We must build them a toy factory here in Lapland at the top of the world to keep wishes alive, magic alive, and the elf world alive. As Wish finished speaking, the hush of the forest was replaced with joyful cheers. And as Zauber asked the chattering elves to take a vote on the decision, every hand shot into the frosty air. And so it happened that the red-shawled toy makers made wishes come true every Christmas. And the couple who once thought they may never become a mother or father had become mother and father to children all over the world. So there you are, small folk. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful story. I hear the elves are calling me to get ready for the sleigh. So off to bed, all of you, and I hope I can bring all your wishes on Christmas morning.